Hello, everybody. My name is Maurice Button. I'm the CEO of City and Financial Global, and I'd like to welcome you to the latest in our series of speaker interviews. Today, we have with us Dr. Ansgar Koene, who's the Global AI Ethics and Regulatory Leader at EY. And Ansgar is going to be speaking at our forthcoming EU AI Act Summit, which is being held in central London on the 6th of February. Ansgar, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Morris. Great to speak to you.
It's very good to have you with us. Let's turn to our first question. What is the relationship between the EU AI Act and the associated standard setting? And indeed, what is the purpose of these standards?
It's a very good question because these standards actually play a very important role when it comes to how the AI Act is meant to be implemented. The AI Act is what the EU refers to as a piece of legislation under the new legislative framework. It's traditionally being used for product safety applications. And really, one of the key ways in which that type of legislation operates is that the regulation, the AI Act, outlines sort of what one is supposed to achieve. It's about how to make sure that we achieve safe, secure, and fundamental rights protections, but it doesn't specify the specifics about how to go about doing that.
Right.
For those, it points to what's referred to as harmonized standards. That's to say, standards that are created by the technical community, in this case, the European standards body, CEN and CENELEC, which is the European equivalent to ISO, IEC, or at the international level, or BSI at the UK level. And these harmonized standards are basically the same kind of technical standards that have gone through a check to see that they really address the legal, what the AI Act is trying to achieve legislatively. And so then they become the preferred way of achieving compliance. So basically, in order to make sure that you've implemented the right type of risk management system for AI, in order to be compliant with the AI Act, you use the harmonized standard for AI risk management.
Okay.
So that's really the idea.
That's a very clear explanation. Thank you for that. And how does the process work, and which sort of organizations are involved? You mentioned the European equivalent of BSI, but are there a number of different bodies involved? And how does that process work?
Sure. So in order to create these harmonized standards, the European Commission has identified that these will be created by a joint committee of CEN and CENELEC. So these are the two EU standards development bodies. The third one being ETSI, which is focused more on cybersecurity questions. ETSI has been pointed to as providing input, but not being a developer of the standard. Now, CEN and CENELEC, as being European level standards developers, they're actually not EU standards developers. They're for Europe. So the UK, for instance, as well as Turkey, Iceland, Norway are also part of the CEN and CENELEC. CEN and CENELEC operate via member country standards boards. So you participate in the standards development at CEN CENELEC by being part of a national standards body. So I participate in CEN CENELEC activities via my membership with BSI. And then Dean from Germany is bringing the German representatives into, etc.
Okay, very good. So it's quite a sort of formal process. Which parts of the Act are likely to be clarified through the use of standards? You mentioned in an answer to the earlier question the approach to risk management, but are there specific parts of the Act which are focused on in detail through the standards?
Indeed. So the standards are meant to enable compliance with the AI Act. So they focus on questions related to, once you've identified that your system is a high-risk AI system, you therefore have obligations to have done certain things during the development process or the deployment process that will make sure that you are basically creating good quality AI. And so the AI Act identifies some of these obligations, such as a risk management system, data governance, quality of data sets, record keeping, transparency in information provisions, human oversight, accuracy, robustness, cybersecurity, zero quality management, and having a conformity assessment process. And so the European Commission has already issued a standardization request to Sensenelec for each of these. And they may add
Right.
one or two as the technical trilogues continue until sometime in February.
What's the timeline for this rather quite complex process to be completed by?
So ideally, we would love to have these standards as soon as the AI Act gets ratified, which would be sometime in the middle of this year.
Yeah.
Practically, that's not going to happen. Um, Really, what we need is for them to be in place in time for when companies need to be compliant. And so for these high-risk AI system obligations, which is what the focus is of these standards, um, compliance will start to take effect 24 months after the AI Act is ratified. So we're looking at middle of 2026.
Okay.
Obviously, getting the standards completed one day before that isn't good enough. We still
No.
need at least a year running time. So the target is really to get these standards ready in the run sort of by the end of this year, middle of next year. It will be very challenging. This is recognized, which is why the Commission has already issued the standardization request, which is unusual. Usually that would happen after the ratification.
Okay.
And Sen and Senelec already started the work a year ago in order to try and get things ready as soon as possible.
So if you're a company that's going to fall within the ambit of the Act, is there much you can do by way of preparation, since they won't have sight of these implementing standards for quite some time? What would your advice be to them in terms of how to prepare now?
So there are a number of basic actions that any company will need to take, and that will not depend on the specifics of how you're doing it. So not
Yeah.
depend on the first one being having a good inventory of where do you even have AI, and the second one being assessing whether these systems fall into the high risk category or not. Most likely, the majority of your uses of AI will not fall into high risk, and so
Yeah.
therefore will not have significant obligations. But knowing which one is which is, of course, vitally important. Then keep abreast of any kind of publications that come out of the standards bodies. And it's interesting and valuable to pay attention also to what's happening at the ISO level, because Senelec is going to try to import as much as possible the international standards into the European spaces. For instance, the recently published ISO IEC 42001 AI management system standard will most likely be the basis of the management system standard, the harmonized management system standard that Senelec will sign up. Effectively, they will take the ISO version, assess whether it meets European requirements. Often that will just mean translating some things that in the international case might be optional into mandatory parts of the
Yeah.
standard. And then effectively that will become the European standard. So looking at and getting ready to use already some of these international standards can be a great way to get prepared for the European harmonized standards.
Thanks, Sam. That's a very clear piece of guidance. Thank you so much for that. For our viewers, if you'd like to hear more about this and related issues and this very important piece of legislation, please do attend in person the EU AI Act Summit in London on the 6th of February. More information available from the City and Financial Global website. Just remains for me to say, Ansgar, thank you very much indeed for sharing those insights with us today.
My pleasure.